Recording in progress.
Hello everyone, good morning. How is your weekend going? Welcome to today's class on web design, and today's class is going to be on forms and user input validation, which will be taken by Mr. Muhyiddin Pokuola. Mr. Muhyiddin, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
All right. You may start now.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me just share my screen. All right. Good morning, everyone. So just like they said, today we are going to be looking at forms and user input validation. So in the first week of our JavaScript class, we talk about some basic concepts like variables, arrays, data types, string, numbers. And in the second week, we talk about how to manipulate our DOM to change text or to change styling, basically to make our website interactive. So we are going to be taking it a little bit step further today by looking at forms and user input validation. So in our outline, we are going to be talking briefly about forms. I know you guys already know what forms look like in your HTML class, but we are going to be talking about a couple of things that you might not know about forms. So we are going to also talk about form validation, what they are and why they are important. So, and then we'll talk about ways of form validation. So there are different ways by which we can validate the forms on our website, and we are going to be taking a closer look at those ways. So, and then I'm going to show you how you can actually create a form and like validate it. So for the purpose of this class, I already designed this basic form. So this class is a JavaScript class, so I don't want to bore you with writing the HTML and CSS. I know this is something that you can write on your own. So it's just a basic form element and a couple of input tags there. So there is input for full name, for email, and then password and confirm password. So this is a typical form that you're likely going to see on different websites out there. So, and I want to show you how you can add form to your own website that you'll be building and how you can also validate them. So that's what this class is going to be about. So I will always be checking the chat space. So if you have any clarification, as always during the class, please feel free to put them in the chat space so that I can clarify it before I move on. So let's start. So for the purpose of this class, I expect you to have your code editor. I recommend Visual Studio Code because that's what I'm using. But if you have any other text editor like Notepad or Sublime, it's going to work fine as well. So here is also a couple of VS Code extension that you can install to make the whole development experience easier in case you are using VS Code. So Emmet, Live Server, HTML, and CSS supports. So Live Server is what I'm using to show this web page. So if I make any changes in our HTML here, let's say, let me just add, please fill all details correctly. So once I save it and then I go back to my web page, you see that I don't need to refresh before the updates, before the web page updated the changes that I made. So that's what Live Server does for you. Unlike just opening the HTML file directly in your web browser. So you can download Live Server extension on Visual Studio Code. So it just saves time instead of refreshing, right? So that's what you need for this class. So what is a form? So they say a form, here I said a form is an element in HTML that allows users to enter and submit data to a web server. So a form is like a questionnaire on a web page which asks users for inputs, like different inputs. It depends on the kind of website that you're trying to build. So that's going to determine the kind of details that you are going to ask from your users. So for example, if you are trying to build a website for a gym membership website. So details that you can probably ask from your users that are trying to register on that gym membership website are things like their name, of course, maybe their address, just so that you can have their address in case you need to reach out to them, their email, their phone number. You can also ask about their goals. What do they want to achieve from being a member of your gym? So those are the kind of details that you can include in your form. So, and they are going to allow you to make decision. So form, apart from signing up just so that you can give your details or so that you can be able to log in next time, form are also crucial for businesses. So when you collect details from your users, you are able to make business decisions off of those data that you collected. So that's why when you go to a website and you're about to leave, they will say that, oh, help us improve our services. So they ask you to fill some form. They will ask you about your experience. Do you think our website is easy to use? Do you think it is intuitive enough? How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? What are the things you think we can improve on? So all those details, they are collecting it so that they can improve their services. So form is not just something that you use to sign up or registered on a website. It's beyond that. So you can also use it to collect users' detail so that you can improve your businesses. So it is also used most time to create targeted content for users. So you want to know what are their goals, what do they like, what do they like. So if you have like a blog, for example, or you have like a content website where you post content most time and you want to know the kind of content that you send to people, so you give them a form to fill on the website, you ask for their interest and what are the things that they like to do, and from that you can make those crucial decisions. So if you check on the screen here, there is a form examples, and this is how it usually looks like. So they say form action is submit. So this form will, anytime you want to make an action on it, maybe someone click a button inside of this form, you see there's a button here. What we want to happen is to submit. So there's likely going to be a JavaScript file that you name submit. So what we want to do is we want to run that JavaScript file. So this is maybe like an old way of submitting form. I'm going to show you the new and the modern way. So the second attribute you have on the form, because those things are attributes, like I said in our last class. So the second attribute is method. So the method can be a post method or a get method. And it depends on the kind of website or the kind of form that you are trying to build. So if you use a post method on a form, it means that the details of that form will not be shown on the URL. So that's how it works. So sometimes when you click a form and you click on submit, you see all the details that you inputted being displayed on the URL, because that is the way it is being sent to into the server. So that form is making use of get method. But if you are using a form, if you have a form that is using a post method, so it's not going to show on the URL. So your URL will remain the same. So if you look here, you see, it's index.html. When you click on submit, it's actually going to submit. This URL will remain the same thing. So the page will reload. And yeah, so that's what this method is all about. The second tag you are seeing here is label. So oftentimes when you go to websites, so you have an input field and then you have like a text explaining what the input field is doing. What are the details that they are expecting from that input field. So it's very important for you to have, when you have an input field, you need to have a label. Sometimes though, you might not have a label, because even if I remove all this label here, if you want to try to fill this form, it's still intuitive. You will know that, oh, this field is for full name because of the placeholder here. to enter your full name. Even if full name is not here, you know that you're supposed to input your full name here. And here, likewise, you're supposed to input your email address. You are supposed to enter your password and re-enter your password. So without those forms. But sometimes your input field might not have like a placeholder. So that's why form is important. And another thing that makes form important is when you click on this label, because we've connected the label with the input field. So when you click on this label, it's going to put the focus on its input element. So when I click on confirm password, see what happens. So it take the cursor immediately to the confirm password field and I can start entering my details. Same thing with name. So there has to be an error. So when you click on full name, it's supposed to put it here. So let's quickly fix that. So label, yeah. So here's the mistake. The label is supposed to be for name, not for email. So I'm going to explain how you can add all these things later. They're just basic HTML that I assume you are familiar with. So when I click on full name now, you see it's focusing there. So that's what labels does. It's add description to your form. It also makes it easy for people to input their details. So the next attribute, the next tag here is inputs. So inputs here they said is type of text and name is equals to username. So name is just something that you can use to identify the input field. But sorry. So name is just something that you can use to identify the input field. But it's not a must you have inputs of type text. You can have different inputs. So let me come down here and show you what I mean. So before the submit button, I can have like an input and type is equals to, you can say the type is equals to number. These are basic HTML tags that I think you are familiar with. I just want to show you. So input type is equals to number. So if you come back here, you see, even if I'm trying to type letters inside it, but it's not accepting it because we've said the input has to be of number. So the only thing it can take is number and some symbols, maybe like dots or like hyphen. So it's not going to take any letters. And it's not only number, you can also have inputs of checkbox. So you can have inputs, which type is going to be radio, like different inputs. So you can check them out depending on what you are trying to achieve on your website. So there's no limit to the kind of things you can build with those forms. So that's that about inputs. And then you have a button. So every form that you have on your website has to have a button because for users to submit their details, there needs to be a button there. And the button should have a good name. So if it's login, put it there, login. So if it's sign up, put it there, sign up. For this one, it's a sign up page. You want to submit your details. That's why you have submit there. And anytime you press on submit, the form should be able to submit. So that's that. That's everything you need in a basic HTML. Your different styling to it. This is not it's styling just to make it look nice. So that's that about form. Are you with me? Sorry, if you are with me in session, just so I can know that you are following. So while we are doing that, I'll just move on to form validation. So with now we know what form looks like, and now so let's talk about form. Yeah. So form validation is the process the data submitted through web form is consistent and conform to specific rules that are predefined. So when you are working on a website or you are working for a company or an organization, they want to have a uniform data. So when they to collect data from users using form, they want those data to be structured, right? So it's something that should be easy to maybe like process with Excel or like any other data processing tool. So that means for the data to be uniform or to be structured, you have to have some predefined rules that the data must meet up to before your website allows those data to pass through. So for example, one of the basic one like that you can do with HTML is to add the type. So type of text or type of number means that this particular input field will not take any other value aside from number. And it's very important because sometimes people might write string, people might write letters, even though you put it there that, oh, this field is number. So people will just write like string or write any other thing that you don't need. So, or for example, an email. So if you want an email on your website, you want every time this field only takes an email, then you need to validate that field to ensure that, oh, the only data that this field is going to take is email, so that when people write their name or their age or matric number in that field, it's not going to take it. So that's like what form validation looks like basically. Since it stops users from filling wrong data or prevents malicious entity from filling in harmful code or virus share form, it acts as the first line of defense for business against erroneous data entry, malicious users, and spam. So apart from getting uniform data or structured data, so some people also use this form itself to attack your website. So there's what we call so when hackers realize that there is no security on your form, so there is no validation, your form is taking any data that people input into it. It's not even filtering data, it's not like stopping data from being submitted. So they can inject harmful code into your website. And you know that form is going to take the data to the backend. So once this harmful code gets to the backend, it can like destabilize your whole system. So that's why you need to also make sure that you are validating your form. So form validation acts as a first line of defense for your business because you don't want anybody to just come and inject harmful code or virus into your business. So form validation helps you to prevent that. So let's talk about the importance of form validation. So there are three important here. It's more, but these are just the three basic ones. The first one is data accuracy, just like I was explaining. So you want your data, the data that users are going to input in your form to be accurate as much as possible. So the only way for your data to be accurate is when you have form validation. Enter data, when they submit that form, you first check the form. Does this form conform to what we want? If it doesn't conform, you reject it. You don't allow them to submit it. So if it does, if it passes your criteria, then you allow that form to be submitted. But if it doesn't, you communicate to the user. Maybe it's an email, but they are writing name, something that does not look like a valid email. So you can tell them, oh, this field only accepts a valid email, or please enter a valid email. Or sometimes when you're trying to sign up on a website, you see password, confirm password. So those two fields must have equal, like they must have the same value. But sometimes people might write something different in their people might write something different in the password and something else in the confirm password. So and it's going to create a problem because they might not even know what their actual password is. So you need to inform them that, oh, this password has to match, like the two passwords has to be the same. So before you allow them to submit the form. The second reason is security. So just like I explained, a lot of people want to exploit the vulnerability of your website. So as a website designer, you must think about security when you are building your website, especially because you don't know the kind of website you are going to build. You might be building a fintech app. So a fintech application that process money basically. So like online versions of, let's say you're trying to build Alert Wema by Wema Bank, like all those online banking apps. It might not even be a banking app, it can be a loan app or anything that has to do with processing money. So you have to be very careful in terms of form validation. So because form is one of the ways that your front end communicates with your back end, and users, you are taking data from users, so they can inject malicious code through those. When it gets to your backend, it can cause a lot of harms. So you need to ensure that you are validating the input that the users are giving you before you send it to the backend. Of course, you also need to validate them in the backend because some people are actually tricky and very good. They might bypass your front-end validation. So you have some very cool front-end validation, but it's in front-end, it's in the browser. So they can just go to the console and deactivate your your validations and everything we went through. So you still need to validate data in the backend. But before you do the backend validation, it's important that you don't overload your backend. So you just do it in the front end. And most time, a lot of people don't know. So it might be a mistake. So they just correct it and then they send the data to the backend. So it reduces the workload that your server or your backend has to do. The last reason why you might need a form validation is user experience. So it can improve user experience by preventing users from submitting form with errors or telling them what needs to be filled. This can save users time and frustration. So if you are signing up on a website for the first time and you don't know how the website works or the details that they need, so and you input something and you have to wait because when you submit the form, it goes to the backend try to validate it. If it doesn't pass the validation, the backend is going to send a response. Now imagine you have to wait for that whole process just because you forget to add .com or @gmail.com to your email address. And then when you fix that, there's still another error, but you still need to wait again for the backend to check it and then come back. So those things take time and it's bad for user experience. So when users are working on a form, you want them to be able to see something immediately. So when I go back to this form, immediately I click on submit. I see means this form will not allow me to submit without filling out this field. When I go back here, I type submit. Please fill out this field. I fill it and then I press submit. Please include an in the email address. So that means you know that, oh, this field only take an email address. You don't have to wait for any response to come from backend. So it saves time and it's better for user experience. So that's another reason why you might need form validation in your website. So ways of form validation. There are two ways by which you can validate a form. So the first one is before submission or inline validation. So everything I've been showing you before here, you know, it's immediately I click on submit. It's not as if it has submitted. It hasn't. So it hasn't submitted at all. But immediately you are getting an error here that, oh, this form does not pass our validation test and you need to change it. So that's what they mean by inline or like before submission or inline validation. So it is performed basically by combining HTML with JavaScript. So that everything I've been doing on the screen here, all those validations are HTML. So I haven't add any JavaScript. So that means you can also add a couple of validations to your HTML. But for user experience, it's better to add JavaScript. So that means it gives you more flexibility in terms of the kind of error that you want to throw. So here it's just saying, please include an @ in the email address. You might want to say something like, please enter a valid email address instead of please include @. So JavaScript allows you to do all those customization. So it has great benefits. It prevents users from submitting form with errors or wrong information. Sometimes people might not even know that they are submitting wrong information. So it's your job to let them know that, oh, the information is the wrong one. Gives immediate feedback to users. So users don't have to wait, just like I said, for the response to come from the backend before they know that, oh, these details that I just input in this field is not correct. It is ideal to verify email address, matching password, and other similar fields. So it's very good for inline validation. Is very good, especially for scenario like registering on a web page. So like this one, you have password and you have confirm password. So if I type ID here, I type ID. So because it is password, you cannot see it. So and here I type ADD. So if I type press on submit, let me just do this. So it's submitting. That's because JavaScript is not included. So even though I input two different things in those two fields, it's not supposed to submit because that's what we want to achieve. We want to ensure that users know the password that they type. So we want to force them to type it twice to be very sure that, oh, there's no mistake. But now it's not working. It's because there's no JavaScript there. So if JavaScript is there, You don't have to submit and wait, because backend is going to do the verification and know that, oh, those passwords do not match. But you want to do it in the front end and let people know that, oh, like the password they just entered is different, and then they can change it immediately. So that's why. So the second one is after submission. After submission validation. So after submission, validation process all the data once the user submits the form. It is typically done using a programming language like PHP, Python, or Node.js. So it's a server-side validation, just like I said. If you validate your data as a front-end developer, you still need to validate it again as a back-end developer, because back-end is what actually communicate the database directly. So you need to make sure that even if people bypass your first layer of security, which is the front end, they are unable to bypass the second layer of security, which is the back end. So you also need to validate it at back end level. And you can use different programming language, like different back end programming language, like PHP, Python, or Node.js, which is like a JavaScript runtime environment in the server. So it examines the entire form, check for errors, missing information, or invalid entry after the data is submitted. If any issues are identified, it generates error message and provide feedback to the users. Users can then make corrections and resubmit the form. So the benefit of backend is it's more secure than inline validation, because like I said, people can bypass inline validation. So if you go to your console here, you see everything. So if I go here, so and if you change this to, the reason why you are getting error is because it's email. So if you change it to text, so now it's text. Let me try to. So that's not a valid email. So it's submitted, even though it's not supposed to submit. But because I inspect it, I changed this type, which was initially an email, I changed it to a text, and now it's accepting text. So every validation that you do on front end is not 100% bulletproof. Like people can change it or try to, like find their way around it by inspecting it in the tab and changing the security that you set up. So backend security or validation is, and it's very important than front end. It can validate complex data such as uploaded file or code injections. So if I inject code here like this, let me just tell you what injection means. So this is a p tag, obviously. So and I write name and I submit. So it's going to take it. So let me just put an email, test at email, password, pass. I'm going to put pass and I submit. So it's still going to take anything as front end, as long as it does not go against what you specify. So it means people can write code, they can write PHP, they can write anything here, and those code can cause harm in your server. But server-side validations allows you to handle all those complex data and verify them. It can integrate with other systems such as database or payment processors. So another form of validations that you often have has to do with authentication. So when you sign up on any website, you've signed up before, you are given a password and a username. So when you try to log in, so you submit your password and your username. So when you get to backend, it's going to validate it by making query to the database. First, it's going to look for that username. Does this username exist in our database? If it doesn't exist, it's going to throw an error back to you that, oh, invalid username or password or something like that. However, if the username exists, it's going to check, does this password that the user enter matches the password that is stored in the database? If it does it's going to throw error. This password is incorrect or something like that. And if it does, it's only if the user exists and the password is correct, that is the only time that is going to authenticate you and allows you to proceed. So server side is also very it's like a second layer of validation or security that you need to have on your website, and it's very, very important. So that's why that's what it looks like. So which way is the best form of validation method? Is it before submission or inline validation or after? That's like the server-side validation. So which one should you use? Which approach is better? Well, the best way to look at it in everybody's opinion, like what is considered as best practice, is to use both. So you want to have the server side, you want to have the server side, the client side validation in place, and you also want to have the server side validation in place. The server side is good for more security because it's very difficult for people to bypass it. But for front end, it is good for user experience. So user don't have to wait before before the backend process it and then send back an error, which if you have a bad network, it takes time, seconds or even minutes. So you want them to see something immediately and then they can change it. So it's good for user experience. So that's why you need to strike a balance between the two. You need to have both on your website. If you do only server side, yes, you have more security, but you don't have better user experience because it takes time for people to know what's wrong. If you have only front end side, yeah, you have good user experience because people can see things on time, but it's not good in terms of security, especially when you have malicious people trying to bypass your security. So the way you can have the goodness of both worlds, user experience and security, is when you have both on your website. You have both the security and the you have both the front-end validation and the server-side validation. Are we following? Please, if you are following, let me know in the comment section so I can know I'm not just talking to myself. All right. So for the purpose of this class, we are going to be looking at the front end or like the inline before submission validation. So like I showed you before, I'm just going to take away this input field that I just created. I think I do. So I already prepared this form. So it's very simple form. Just please fill out all details correctly. Your name, your email address, your password, and your confirm password. So we already have some HTML validation here. So if you go to the form itself, under the label, I say for name. So it means this label is for an input field of type of name. So every input field has to have a name. So this name, it's an attribute, and the value I'm assigning it is name. So there's another name here, and the value is email. And I'm saying that this label is for email. So this label is for password because it has a name of password, and this is for confirm password because it has a name confirm password. So, but the reason why it's not allowing me to submit when I try to submit is because of these attributes here, required. So I'm saying that this input field is required, and if users doesn't input anything inside of it, it should not allow them to submit. So that's why you have required here. But the required here is of type email. So that's why even though when I input something in this field, and I try to submit, it doesn't allow me to submit because the browser knows that for an email, you have to have an @ So every email has to have @ text at email.com, at gmail.com, at hotmail.com, at yahoo.com. There has to be @ and something has to follow. So even if I press @ and I press submit, it still say please enter a path following @ so it can be @co. So it's submitted, but it's still not a valid email address because there's nothing like @co. But that's still like it's still better. At least you allow the users to know that it's a valid email that they need to input into this field, and because you need to send them OTP. So even if they go ahead and send and input a wrong email address after you've explained to them that this field is email address, they won't be able to get the OTP. So they still won't be able to proceed with registration. So OTP is also another form of validation that you have on the server. So that's why you have all those attributes here. But if you want to have a custom error like this, so now it's generic. You might want to style it. You might want to have like a text here. Please enter a valid full name. So here after the inputs, so you can have something like P. Please enter your full name. Okay. So because of the styling, let me just change the styling for the div. I'm going to put it as flex direction colon. So we can fix that error. Yeah. Okay, so let me just give them a gap of 100. Just so we can see some space. All right. So yes, please enter your full name. So I'm going to give it a class of error because I want to style it a little bit to make it look realistic. So I'm going to give it a class of error. So here we have dot error. I'm just going to give it like that. So I don't need a success. So here's it. So that's what I want to have. Margin top. I don't want margin top. Yeah. Or maybe I want margin top, but it shouldn't be one rem. Yeah. So anytime users try to submit this form without inputting their name, I want to create an error like this. Please enter your full name. So, but the problem is now it's not even allowing the users to like submit the form at all before it's displaying the error. So at least we want users to, once they come on the page, there's no error, they submit, they type in something. But if they don't type full name and they click on submit, we want to give them this error. So what you can do is so you can make the, so there are different ways you can achieve it actually. So you can use class list to add a display, like just like we said last week. I already told you how you can manipulate the DOM. So you can put the content here, and in the class you set the display to none, so that when users come to the page for the first time, they are not going to see the error. But once they submit, you check if there is error. If there is error using your if statement, then you want to change the display of that element to maybe like an inline or a block. So that's another way. What I'm going to do is I will leave it here. I will allow it to display, but I'm going to be changing the contents in the website. So the first thing we need to do in order to access this form is to add an event listener to the form. So last week, I already told you how you can add event listener to your form. So first, you are going to get our form, document dot, no, it's document dot query selector. So I'm going to use query selector of form because the class name is form. So, and I'm going to now do form dot add event listener, submit. Sorry. So I'm going to console dot log form submitted. There's an error. Oh, I'm supposed to close this. Yeah. So for this to work very well, I'm going to first remove all the required attributes so that I can allow users to submit the form even without inputting the necessary stuff. So if I go here and I come here, so in our console here, if I click on submit, I should be able to see form submitted. But you realize that immediately I click on submit, there is form submitted, but it's disappearing almost immediately. So if I click on it again, you see the form submitted, but then it's disappearing. The reason why that is happening is because of the default behavior of form. So every time you have a form element on your website, the default behavior is that when you submit that form, it should reload. So like what it's doing is reloading. So if I have something here and I reload, oh, it's because I input it directly into the console. But what happens is if you have an input or you have anything, anytime you reload, it's going to disappear. So that's why we are having form submitted and then it's disappearing immediately. So what you can do in order to like prevent that default behavior of form. So anytime you have like a form that you're trying to submit or you are trying to add validations to, the first thing that you need to do is to access these events. So let's console.log. Okay, we can't see that event, but what you do is you write let me just put it as event because it's event. This parameter is what is going to allow you get access to the event that triggers every time you try to submit your form. So what you do is event.prevent default. And I already told you that the default behavior is reloading. So anytime you write event.prevent default, it means that it's no longer reloading. So now we can now say console.log form submitted, and we should be able to see our console very well. So if I come back here and I press reload, I don't need to do that, but let me just do it. And now I click on submit. You see, there is form submitted. But apart from that, it's not reloading. So if you check here, it's no longer reloading, so it's just there. So that means you can now implement your client-side validations, add different things that you want without them being cleared when the form reload. So that's the first step. Anytime you want to add validations to your website, so you need to first prevent defaults. So the next thing we want to do is to access this input field, this full name. So we want to access it. So I'm going to say so we want to access it when when they are trying to submit the form, not when the page load. That's why we need to do it inside of this submit event handler. So you're going to say const name is equals to document dot query selector name dot value. So when you're working on when you try to access just an element, we don't use value. We just say document dot query selector and then we give the ID or the name of that element. But when you are working with a form and you want to access the value itself, because let me show you what happened. So if I didn't add this value and I just say document dot query selector name, let's see if we have a class of name. No, we don't have a class of name. We have an ID of name. So I'm going to quickly change that to ID. So instead of dot, I'm going to have hash. Yeah. So, and then I'm going to console.log that name, just the name. So if I go back here and I press, and I type my name. So if I click on submit, I'm getting that event.prevent default. What's happening? Okay, so now you can see the elements. So we are seeing the input field, like the way it is. So you see input is type is equals to text, ID is number, name is name, placeholder is enter your full name. So but that's not what we need. In order to verify the details, what we need is the value that the user inputs into the field, this name, or like this Muideen. So, but we are not seeing it here. So in order to access that thing that user inputs, we need to add dot value. So here you're going to add dot value. So anytime I now console.log this, I'm going to refresh. So Muideen. So you can see Muideen here. And you can do the same for every other thing. So now you can now use this name variable to conditionally render this error. So this is what I mean. I'm going to select that error here. Const name error is equals to document.query selector name error. So I'm going to change this to name error. So if I come back here, it's a class of name error. Yeah. So we have the name and we have the name error. So what I'm going to say is if there is no name, so that means if name is empty, that means user did not input anything into that name field. So what I want to do in those times is name error dot, we already know text content from our class last week is equals to please, it's a string, please enter your name. So if you come back here, let's see. So if you refresh, now nothing happens. But if you click on submit, you see, please enter your name. So the reason why this the class, I'm going to quickly update the style because it has to be, that's the behavior that you're likely going to see in many browsers. So I'm going to refresh again. When I click on submit, you see, please enter your name. So when I try to write something inside, you see, submit. And the reason why this thing is not like changing, even though now I've written something inside it, but please enter your name is still there. It's because we are not changing the content here. So when we press on submit, if the name is valid, we want to do something. So what I'm going to do is here. But if you go to the website for the first time and you write me again and you click on submit, you are not going to see the error because this field is not running, because this name constant is not empty. So that's why, in order to prevent that behavior of, if you don't have a name before, you have the error and then you input the name, but the error still stays. So before you do anything, you can say, first clear the previous error message, so that anytime that you press submit, this line of code is going to be executed again. So if you come back here and you press on submit, so you say, please enter your name. You can say name. Oh, sorry, no name. Let me just move it in. And then you press on submit. So the error is going to disappear. So that's how you can undo this sort of error message and dynamically render them. So this same way you add validations to your full name, you can also add validations to every other field. So let's say here, you have email. So you have your email address and type is equals to email. So I'm going to select that email, the ID is email. So let's say it's the email that you want to validate now. So you want to validate the email, you need to you need to carry this error message. So you can add different error message for different field, customized one, but I'm just going to show you how you can validate your email as well in this one. So I'm going to change this to email, and this will be email error. So this, I'll just leave the class name, it doesn't matter. So name error.text content, that's good. That should be email error, not name. Email error, the text content. Const email is equal to document.query selector email. Yeah, we are selecting our email. And here you can say that email, if there is no email, this sign, I talked about it in our first class. So that's the not sign. So that means you're saying if email is not empty. I told you that anytime you add that symbol to a variable, it changes the state of that variable. So if this email is true, not mean not true. So what we are trying to say here is if this email is not true, that means the email is empty. We want to run this particular line of code. So if this email is empty, but if it's not empty, then you should not do anything. So that's what we want to do. So please enter your email. So your email. So please enter your email. So if I go back here so if I click on submit, name error is not defined. There's an error somewhere. So it's email error, but I'm saying name error here. I've changed it to email error. So those are the kind of bugs you see most time. You need to fix them. So there's no life without as a software developer. So if you click on submit, you see, please enter your email. But if I write Muideen here, please include at your email address. That's because the type. That's not what I want to show you. I want to show you a word where there is no HTML validation. So this type, I'm going to change it to text. So it's text, but I still want to take email. So because I want to have a customized message for my email. So if I click on submit, it says please enter your email. If I write Muideen, so it's submitting. So it's no longer showing error, but this is not a valid email. So that's why you need to have a customized email address for your field. So here you can say, instead of just saying emails does not exist, if email doesn't exist, do this. You can say email dot, there's a method on string, which is includes. So includes at. So include at. This means that anything that the users input here must include this symbol before it is allowed. So if you go back here and we try to write Muideen, please enter your email address. If I write at, it's now submitting. So like you can have different things, you can walk around with the methods on string just to create a very robust validation for yourself, and you can create customized message that goes along with them. So if you do this, please enter your email. So that's how you can handle your validation. The last one I want to show you then is this password. So what we want to achieve here is when I press Muideen here, and I press Muideen here. So I'm going to change the type to text just so you can see it. Just so you can see what I'm trying to. So here the type is password. So I'm going to change it to text. The text so that you can see what you are typing. So in a typical form, what you're going to have is an I symbol, something like this at the front that you can use to toggle between displaying it in plain mode like this and displaying it in password mode. So it's just you using JavaScript to toggle the state, so the type. So anytime they click on that I icon, you are changing the type of that input field from text to password and from password to text. So that's how people implement that functionality. But what we want to have is, if you have added here and you have add, so that's just you mistakenly change the last number. If you click on submit, please enter your email address. This is annoying. I'm going to delete this. And here I'm going to write console.log form submitted here. So that's what we want to do when the form is submitted. We want to console.log form is submitted. So if I come back here and I press on submit, everything is working, form is submitted, no validation. But what I want is anytime users input a password, those passwords must be the same before you allow them. So if it's not the same, it has to tell them that, oh, this password must be the same. So I want to have that error display here. So the way you can do that is to come to your HTML. First, I'm going to copy that error message. So I'm going to come down here. I think it's here. So I'm just going to call it error because that's the only error we have on our web page for now. So the class of error, and in our style, I'm just going to change it to error. All right. So what we want to do is we want to get access to those two fields anytime users are submitting. So we want to get access to the value of password and the value of confirm password. We will then compare them. So are they the same thing? If they are the same thing, let this form be submitted. If they are not the same thing, don't allow this form to be submitted. So the first thing we need to do is to get access to the value of confirm password. Const password is equals to document.query selector password.value, and do the same for confirm password. I just need to check if that's the class. So we have password ID and we have confirm password. So they are ID, not class. I'm going to change that. So I'm going to change that quickly. All right. So we have the password and we have the confirmed password. So anytime they click on submit, that's what we want. So we first prevent the default, which is reloading, and then we get access to the value inside the password and the value inside of the confirmed password field. So what we can now do is to compare, and you already know how you can compare. If password is not equals to confirmed password, so that's what I'm doing here. If password is not equals to confirm password, I told you that this sign is not sign. So if I put something like this, that means password is strictly equals to confirm password. What I want to check for is not when it's not equals to password. So what I want to do is I want to check this email error. It's not email error, it's password error. So it's password error, and remember, we've already changed the class name to just error. So here I'm going to change it to password error. So it's password error. Yeah. So password do not match. I already have the test color as red, so I don't need that piece of code. So return from this function. So you can have the return keyword. You might choose not to have it. So let's just remove it for simplicity. So if this code do not run, so that means like if this password do not match, this code will run. If this password match, it will skip this if statement and print this form submitted. So let's see if that's going to work. So on our form, I'm going to submit Jane Popola test@gmail.com. So I'm going to say password, and here I'm going to say password. Submit, form submitted, because they are the same thing. So they are the same thing. So let's say I now write password 1. So here I'm saying password, here I'm saying password 1. So if I click on submit, I see password do not match. So, and the reason is because this password, the two, we've already set a validation that those two input field must be the same thing for the form to be submitted. And now that they are not the same thing, that's why we are getting that error. So that's how you can also add that kind of validations to your website. So it's just about you adding an event listener to your form, preventing the default, and manipulate the DOM to show certain contents based on certain things. So, of course, you should have this required on your website as well. It's nice to have them. So you don't need to write much of HTML. So you can also, apart from just comparing, so you can do a whole lot of things. So here you can see if password, yeah. So if password.length is less than 8, password.text content, password must be greater. So, and I press my full name, test at Gmail, and I just pass, and here I press pass again. They are the same thing. If I submit, password must be at least 8 characters long. So if the password is 8 character, let's say this one is now 8 character password. So now press submit. So password do not match. It's now as 8 character, but it doesn't match this. So that's where you have. So you can set that sort of layers for your if-else statement. So, and you want to have different message for them. You can also combine them together. So you can do and then you copy this and then you paste it here. So inside, and so you can delete this, but you need to add its password must be 8 characters long and match the confirmation. Yeah, something like that. So if you go back here and you press Muidin, you press test at Gmail. So if you press pass, for example, and here you press pass, submit, form submitted. Sorry, there's something wrong with it, and sorry, Victor, I'm going to take your question in a minute. So that means something is wrong with the validation that we wrote here. So it's password and password.length is greater than, is less than or equals to 8. So it's less than 8, or password is not equals to password confirmed. So that's the logic we want to have. If password.length is less than 8, or password is not equals to confirmed password, we want to display this error. So if any of those conditions turns out to be true, let's see this works. So first one, this password is less than 8. So password must be at least 8 characters long and match the confirmation. So if I write Muideen, it's already, let's say Muideen 1, 2, it's already like more than 8 character, right? But it still doesn't go, must be at least 8 characters long. Is matching on 1, 2. Oh, it's not less than, sorry, it's greater than. If password.length is greater, it's greater than 8, or password is not equals to confirm password, then display this error. No, it should be less than confirm password. So now it's submitted. So you have to be very careful when you're trying to write your logic. So here we are saying that password.length, if it's less than 8 characters, or if password is not equals to confirm password. So if anything that we input here is less than 8 character, or what we input here is not equals to what we input here, we want to have that form. So if you change something, then you'll see that error, because it's, even though this condition is true, the second condition is not true because the password is not equals to 8. But if I put it back as 8, then it will submit. So test at email. So if you click on submit, then you have your form submitted. Sometimes you need to reload for it to work very well. So that's how you can add validations to your website. You can add different levels of validations, different layers of validation by just adding this event listener to your form. So this form, it has to, like, you can use ID, you can use class. But inside of this form, you need to have a button. So a button of type submit. So if we have a button that the type is button, because type of a button can be button. So if you come back here, so you see nothing is happening. That means we are not triggering the add event listener of submit. So because here you will notice we are listening to an event of submit, but the button we have here is not for submitting. So that's why we are not having that functionality that we implemented. So the button has to be of type submit. So that's what is going to trigger that submit action. So anytime you now click on, then you see all the effects that we just implemented. So that's how you can add some basic validation to your website. So in conclusion, Forms are essential tools for collecting user input on the web. So validations ensure that data submitted is accurate, safe, and usable. So I told you, when you are trying to collect users' information, you want to make business decisions from those information. So the data has to be as accurate as possible. And the only way for them to be accurate is when you validate them before they are submitted or after they are submitted. So it also ensures that the data are safe. So you don't want to collect data that are from malicious users that want to take control of your system. So you also need to filter out any of those kind of data, and also to ensure that those data are usable in terms of making decisions. So both HTML5 and JavaScript offer powerful ways to validate input and guide users. So all those tags that I was adding here, all those required the type of email that you are seeing some built-in validations. This one, they are from HTML5, and the customized one that we add the other time, they are from JavaScript. So that's how you can combine both JavaScript and HTML5 to create some really good form validation. So good validation practice improves user experience, reduce error, and protect your site from malicious users. Always remember, validate on the client side for quick feedback for better user experience. People don't need to wait before the response comes from server before they know that, oh, they omit A or they omit one letter from their confirmed password. Validate on the server side for security. People can bypass front-end validation. So because you spend a whole lot of time doing very nice validation on front-end doesn't mean you no longer have to do it at the back end. It's also very important for you to do it at the back end for security purpose. A well-validated form makes your website more reliable, user-friendly, and secure. So if you want to be a web developer, one of the things that you need to put in mind, especially if you are working on form, because you are going to work on form, there's no way you want to do it. There are just few websites that you might want to work on that it doesn't need any sort of form. But for most websites, let's say 95% of websites needs a form one way or the other. Maybe just a form so that user can contact you. Maybe just a form so that users can input their details, or maybe just a form so that users can drop a review of your website. Anything, like as long as you are collecting inputs from users. So you have to make use of form, and the way to make use of form is to validate them to make them more reliable, user friendly, and secure. So that's that about forms, validations, and user inputs. So moderator, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you for this session so far, Mr. Median.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Are there any questions from anyone? This is the period to drop in your
So Victor Ayomide, you are raising your hand.
Yeah, I have a question, sir.
Okay, shoot.
Yeah, so when you were doing
questions in
the
the chat, so it's dropping the attendance. So make sure you fill in your attendance.
okay, so when you were doing the validation, so I noticed that in the course of confirming the password 2 times, yeah, like I noticed that when you were trying to submit it, even when you were inputting different passwords for the 2 fields, it's still on the console, it's still showing form submitted. So I don't know what's causing that. Even after, like, is there a code we need to write for, like, for it not to submit when the forms are not appropriate, when the inputs on the fields are not appropriate? So that's my question. I have two
Thank you very
questions.
much. Okay, so I think one for console. If you are working on a console, and because we are already prevented the default behavior of form, which is to reload. Do you understand? So that means the content in your console will still be there. So if you click on submit, it doesn't mean that the console, like it's submitting or the console message is being logged. So that's why if you go to the console, let me try to open the console. So let's just say you have so you see form submitted here. And if you try here, okay, sorry, you are right. So there is some issues. So we need to clear this error. So there was a mistake in the code. If you remember, when we tried to work on the other error, like the input field or the form itself, so there is password.error.test content. Because I told you, if you are not refreshing, and it's because of this line of code that we have here, event.prevent default. So because we are not reloading the browser, so the content that we have in the DOM is still going to be there. So in order for you to make sure that it's no longer there, you need to first clear it anytime that you input that password. So you want to change the test content to error like this. So if you go back here now, let's try it. So I'm just going to clear this. So you see form submitted. So if I submit again, you see form submitted is now 3. So for your question, if I now change this, I press form submitted. You see form submitted and it's 4. Oh, so sorry. So you need to add a return statement here. And then when you press form submitted, test@gmail.com. It still works as before, but when I add to, it's no longer in the console. So if I press it again and again, because the password does not match, it's no longer going to write in the console. But if I press it again, it's going to submit. So thank you very much for pointing that out. So the reason why we are still seeing it in the console is because of the way the block works in JavaScript. So if you have this entire code here, we have it in the form.add_event_listener. And what we say is that in the case that if this statement is true, so if the password is less than 8 or password is not equals to confirm password, we want to print this error, right? Without this return statement, what happens is that immediately we finish printing this error, we then move on to like running the other code. So even if you have other code here, console.log other code. So let's assume you have other codes here. So if you go back here and you try to trigger it, let's say Muideen test@gmail, and then you have Muideen here, and then you have Muideen 2, which should actually print the error. So you still see form submitted and other codes. So the reason is because immediately it's finished executing this block of code, it continues to execute other codes. So what you want to do is to write a return statement. So this return statement means after you finish executing this block of code, return from this entire function. So you no longer need to run this again. So the only time that we are going to run this code then has to be the time that this statement is not true. So we are going to omit this return statement. So that's why if you now go back here, if I save it, and you come back here and see gmail.com. So I'm just going to write a pass. So that should be less than 4 letter. So password must be less than, and you are not seeing it here. So if you have one that is greater than 8, password, and here you have password, and you press on submit. That's the only time that you see it. So the only thing you need to add is this return keywords. So it's a keyword in JavaScript that tells the code that you write that, oh, immediately you finish executing this line of code, move out of the block, this block, that parent block, so that you no longer execute every other thing that is in the block. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Second question, sir.
All right.
Yeah, I want to confirm for the validations,
Yeah.
like for 2FA, I mean two-factor authentication.
Yes.
Can you actually do something like that without working with Python, like Python PHP at the back end? Is there a way you can just work with JavaScript alone to achieve your two-factor authentication? Like
So,
maybe you need yeah.
okay, so two-factor authentication, like I told you, there are limits to the kind of validations that you can do on your front end. Sure, you understand. So you still need a backend to do any sort of authentication that you want to do. So, but the good thing is, if you check, like there are some libraries out there that people have already built, maybe with Python or with PHP, that already implement those features. See, like two-factor authentication or Google sign up. Their backend languages, their backend code, they might be written maybe in PHP, like you said, or in Python. But because they've been written, that means you, as a front-end developer, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So all you need to do is to just read their documentation. How can you make use of them in your front end so that you don't need to write it in Python or other language, like you said? But now I don't actually know of any library, but I know that libraries exist. I just can't like remember one right now, because the only ones that I've done is probably like working directly with a backend developer that implements it in the backend. But if you don't have a backend developer and you still want to have two-factor authentication, you can make use of library. So just Google online libraries for two-factor authentication for JavaScript or for React, any front-end framework you are using. So you are good to go.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, moderator, is there any other question?
Okay, since we don't have any other question, please, if you have any question, kindly drop in your question right about now. The attendance have also been dropped in the chat, so fill in your attendance. And Enkosola says, this JavaScript they turn my head. Is it possible to message the instructor for more clarification?
So yeah, it's possible. JavaScript can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So what I would advise is, just like I said in the first class on JavaScript, you have to understand the basic for you to understand the advanced level. So some of the things like form validations are a little bit advanced than just talking about constant and variable that we talked about in the first class. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is to go back to those class, watch it over and over again so that you grasp, like you already get the foundational knowledge of how to create a constant or a variable. So if you notice, when I was doing this part, I didn't take my time to explain what exactly I'm doing, because that's what we did last week. So it's built on top of one another. So if you are not here last week or you don't understand what we did last week, it will be very difficult for you to fully understand what we did today. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is to go to our YouTube channel, rewatch those classes over and over until you grasp it. Sometimes when I was learning JavaScript, I can watch a tutorial 2-3 times just so that I can understand it very well. Because if you don't understand it very well, it's not advisable for you to move on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to practice. So even if I explain everything from now till tomorrow, if you are just watching it, it will be as if you understand. Unless you sit down, try to implement them on your own. So I did for email and name. Maybe you want to did for phone number. You want to validate phone number. You think of, oh, how can I validate a phone number? What is a valid phone number? And then you try to implement those kind of features. So that is also something that you can do. But if all that is not enough, I'm going to drop my WhatsApp number so you can also reach out to me on WhatsApp. Please don't call, just drop a message and I'll try to see if I can attend to them.
Okay, so it seems we do not have any other questions. Kindly fill in the attendance. We are going to end the Zoom call by 11:33. The instructor has also dropped his phone number in the chat, so if you have any questions to ask him, you can message him. So this Zoom call is going to end by 11:33. Kindly fill in your attendance.
Recording stopped.
Okay, that will be all for today's class. You'll be having your next web design class next week, Saturday, but the Zoom class is going to be on Thursday next week. And please, the attendance usually drops on the chat, so at least make an effort and just scroll up or something. So yes, the class is going to end. I would end the Zoom by 11:35. Good day, everyone. See you in the next class. Have a nice weekend.
You too, ma. Thank you.